So then I added a new builder for these, which is very much like the coin pickup. Its whole job is that when you, let me reload this, when you run around and you encounter, I'm going to get killed. Ugh. When you encounter it, when you collide with it, okay, stop it. You, yeah, that's the problem with demoing and having a turret that's trying to kill you. Then it picks it up and puts it in your inventory. Then I also added a small piece of code that's similar to the jump code. So when we hit the jump button, it applies an impulse to the player straight out from the current gravity source. What I did was, is I said when you click this button or you hit the space bar, it creates a graphic for this, adds a body to it, and then gives it a little kick right from the center of the player out here. And it's got a little bit of linear damping, and it's got no angular damping, and then it's got an angular velocity of 90 degrees per second. So in other words, what happens here is we give it a little kick, and then it immediately starts to slow down and eventually stops at some distance, wherever you're pointing, and then it just continues to rotate. So it's got a little visual element, so you can kind of see it there. Then the way these things work is I went back and I modified the turret code, and I'll give you a chance to take a look at that after I go through the fundamentals of vector math here for creating turrets and stuff, which we're going to do next. But I added, okay, first of all, I'm still using the action library, which is going to be released in a plugin in a week or two. I've released 2 plugins so far that are going to be incorporated in this project. One is the collision calculator that makes doing collisions easy by using text instead of numbers or math. And then the vector library, which we're going to see in action today, has been released and slightly modified to make it a little bit easier for folks. And so I'll be incorporating that in the project too before I commit this version. But again, as I was saying, the most complicated thing we're doing in the game so far is the homing missiles. So I don't like to write that code by hand, although we'll do it together today one time so I can show you the basic version. And the reason is because it's easy to do a homing missile that immediately aims in the direction it's supposed to be going. But when you want it to aim at a certain rate and turn slowly, then it starts to get a little more complicated in terms of managing that and make it easy. So I have a library that does all of these things. It's called the Action Library. It's currently part of SSK. And as I said, I'll be releasing it as a plugin, as a separate plugin, so that people can take advantage of this and do one line code like I do instead of doing multiple lines. Although I think doing it the first couple times yourself is probably better so you get the concept. But there's all kinds of little weird tricks. Like, for example, when it fires here. Oh, what the heck was that? I just lost it. Let's try that again. One thing that's really kind of interesting is when you do a homing missile using what I call a naive approach, which we're going to see here in a little bit. Basically what you do is you say, I need to aim this, I need to turn this thing so it's facing the target. So you can do this one way, which is say, just immediately face the target. So it would very abruptly change direction and face the target, which is good in some cases, but it doesn't give you this nice curved path like we're seeing here. So it's turning slowly. So then you say, okay, I can deal with that. And you add some enter frame code, and you say, I can only turn 5 degrees per second or something like that. And you do the math, and you think you've got it all working. And then you start playing, and then about, I would say probably like an hour later, goofing around with your code, you're playing your game, you're having a good time, you go, hey, wait a minute. You'll notice that sometimes the projectile takes the long turn, which is it only needs to go 15 degrees to the left, but because you used a naive approach, which is just thinking in terms of 360 degrees, instead of turning left, your calculation almost certainly, I guarantee you, the first time you do it, will always be rightward. And so it will turn 360 degrees around and take a big loop, and you say, okay. And then you'll puzzle over that for a while. If you've never encountered it, maybe a half an hour later, you'll finally go, oh, okay, I need to split that down the middle, 180 degrees. I need to decide, is the shortest path left or the shortest path right? And you figure it out, and it's all done. Barry's here. So anyways, the point is that the reason I have the action library is so I don't have to remember that stuff, because it is in fact quite painful for me to remember that little trick, which is the split it down the middle, decide which of the 180-degree turns is shorter. All right, so just describing what we put in this. So when I commit this later today, this is the code that's going to be in here, and level 7 is demonstrating the decoy, and I'll just show you what it does. Let's go get our decoy. There's one little bit of code that I added here. Let me pause that. Another thing that comes with the action library is for the homing features, which they're not. It's aiming and stuff like that. It has some debug code so you can see where the target, whatever it is that's aiming is trying to go. So this line represents the target, the current target that is trying to seek. And then there's another little bit of code that you can add. It's a one-liner that says, how many more degrees do I have to turn before I'm directly dead on? So if we keep pausing this, you can see now we only got 29 degrees to go, 16 degrees, and now we're dead on at 0 degrees, aiming directly at the target that we will obliterate in 167 pixels. So the D is how many pixels away is it in design space. So what does the decoy do? The decoy, the way this works, still playing with this a little bit to balance it. Now, one of the problems with doing a feature like this is you put features in, and then they can completely unbalance the gameplay, or they can be completely useless. And right now, this one is feeling a little bit useless to me. It works, and what it does is you fire it off, and then if the turret fires a projectile, a missile, rocket, whatever you want to call it, it's going to search for something nearby, and it will always search first for any decoys. So it prefers decoys to the player. That's the way I wrote the algorithm. So first it looks through the decoys list if there's any out there, and it says, are any of these decoys close enough? Let me find the closest decoy, and that's going to be my target. And then it homes in on the decoy and ignores the player. Now, if it has already locked onto the player, and I fire the decoy, the game's up. It completely ignores the decoy, and it's going to home in and get the player. Now, this is what feels a little bit useless to me. What I was really thinking about doing is allowing you to fire that decoy, and the missile or rocket would say, "Oh, decoy! Ah, let's go for that." Because that kind of seems more defensive to me strategically. And the reason I feel like that's better, and you guys can tell me maybe, maybe not, is there's a limited range in which you have an opportunity to do something. This thing doesn't detect you until you're very close, and then it fires. And then if it immediately locks on you, having that decoy is almost useless, because you almost have to like run around and fire it and then run away. And that's great, but by the time it locks in on the decoy and you've come back around, it's too late to take advantage of that sort of like safety time. So what I mean is, I'll demonstrate this. So we have this, it fires at me, immediately sees me. I got to run over here, and I go, oh, fire. And it's too late, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I can, oops. Still got killed for some reason. Good job, all right. But the point was, is this thing fires so frequently. Let me get somewhere. I'm not very good at playing my own game.
Nice.
Oh, of course, the best place to hide from, I have to tell you, the secret here is right there. Not going to get me. Doesn't have the turning radius to get me.
Just outside of its vision.
So, but the point is that the... Oh, I didn't pick up a decoy. Good job. Ah. Oh, okay. Obviously not good at my own game. So there's some balancing issues with the decoys. Maybe I should shoot them out further, which would give you better placement, because basically you have to aim where you want it to place, and by the time you can aim where you need it, you've already been detected.
Yeah.
So I see that the idea of like deviating and going after the decoy immediately is probably better.